Hello, everyone, and welcome to Light Channel Denmark. Today, we are again blessed having Will Baron with us from Los Angeles. And Will has been with us several times now, and he has sharing with us the danger about different occult practices, which it seems like most of the world are taking part in today. And how does he know so much about these subjects? As we have heard, he, as a quite young man, he was longing for something in life. He was having questions. He was about excitement. And what did he do? He started with yoga. He started with meditation, and he came so far that he became a New Age priest. And as he was telling us, he was actually possessed and by evil spirits for several years, which was telling him what to do, what not to do. And if he didn't obey, they sent him into depression. But the Lord, he knew Brother Will's heart. He knew that he wanted to get out of these evil practices, and he set him free. And if you are involved in some kind of mystical or occult practice, the Lord also wants to set you free. And today, Michael is going to ask Will some critical questions about magic. And when you think about magic, what are you thinking about? I think it's very magic. It's something which really hypnotized me. So it sounds scary. Some people, when speaking of magic, they divide its uses into two categories, white magic and black magic. The definition of these terms, however, is highly subjective, varying from location to location, across time periods, and even person to person. So there is no definite. You can believe what you think, and I think something else. But the most important thing is, what does the Bible say? Essentially, white magic is magic that the speaker considers to be acceptable magic, while black magic is that which is unacceptable, and the limits for acceptance and unacceptable are defined by culture. Again, is there any definite? What is the Bible saying? Today, many people consider white magic to be magic that is only beneficial to the caster or others. So, something beneficial, such as healing and divination. Meanwhile, black magic is magic that is meant to cause harm to another person, what might be called a curse or a hex. The term white magic is also sometimes implies spiritual magic. So here we read about um, healing. So be aware that not all healing comes from the Lord. But there is a third magic, which is called magic, is coming from known as ceremonial magic, and it began primarily as an offshoot of the Freemasonry movement. So, how are we as Christians going to look upon this? Are we looking upon this magic in one way? Is the Bible the way we are defining if it's right or wrong? In Wikipedia, it says Christian views on magics vary widely among denominations and among individuals. Some Christians actively condemn any form of magic as satanic, holding that it opens the way for demonic possession. Others simply dismiss it as superstition. Conversely, some branches of exotic Christianity actively engage in magical practices. So, does it really matter how Christians look upon magic or occult practices. What does the Bible say? We have a verse in the Bible in Leviticus 19:31. Do not turn to mediums or necromancers. Do not seek them out, and so make yourself unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we are just so grateful that you have promised to show us and guide us the way we shall go. And Lord, you know that there are so many people, because they are longing for something in life, they are getting into to so many occult practices which just draw them further away and further away from you. And we know, Lord, that we all are in a spiritual battle, and the battle is of our mind. We have an enemy, the enemy is trying to destroy us, and we have you, Jesus Christ, you came here to set us free. And we are so grateful, Lord, that whatever sin we are struggling with, every temptation we should have, whatever we are involved with, you are able to set us free. We pray, Lord, that you will bless Michael and Will now, as the Will is going to answer some critical questions on these magic occult things. And we pray that you will bless our viewers and that you will open all of our eyes, Lord, because we all need to have our eyes open so that we can see your way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Eva, for the introduction, and hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session, one of many where we will cover black magic techniques described in the Harry Potter books, among other books. Allow me to introduce today's presenter, Will Barron. Welcome again to our program. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. We need to be warning people about this information that's out there.
Right. I just want to inform our viewers that a recorded version of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel and, of course, on our website, lightchannel.dk, at a later point. Would also love to hear from you. So if you have any questions or comments, please do feel free to get in touch with us either by leaving a comment below on our YouTube channel or sending us an email or message. My name is Michael Similia, and I will be your host here tonight. Well, the news story couldn't have been more direct. There now may be more Americans who identify as practicing witches than there are members of mainline Presbyterianism. The same article goes on to say that Wicca has effectively repackaged witchcraft for millennial consumption. No longer are witchcraft and paganism satanic and demonic. It's obviously becoming a pre-Christian tradition that promotes free thought and understanding of earth and nature. And now for the worst of the worst, another article from last year in Christian Post states that despite biblical warnings against the practice of witchcraft, the Reverend Valerie Love, who describes herself as a practicing Christian witch and an ordained minister of spiritual consciousness, is insisting that there is nothing wrong with Christians being witches. And she actually recently launched a school to help Christians tap into magic. She said in the same article, stop thinking you can tell people how to worship. Stop thinking you can tell people how to connect with the divine. I could tell you how many people have told me you can't be a Christian witch, but here I am. See, you can't tell me how to worship. You cannot tell me how to connect with the divine. That's between me and God. You cannot tell me how to pray. A defiant Love declared in a recent rant on her Facebook wall. Now, well, this topic about black magic, would you say that it addresses only Christians? Because one would argue that since I do not believe in God, I don't really believe in evil spirits. So this stuff about black magic is kind of crazy. It's just entertaining, nothing for me, maybe just pure Hollywood entertainment. So even if one does not believe in evil spirits, would your statement be that the option is still there that the black magic, the thing could be, or is it for real? That's the question for tonight.
I would say that black magic is very real indeed. I wish it wasn't. I wish we didn't have to deal with issues like black magic, that we didn't have to concern ourselves with it. But black magic and its counterparts, ceremonial magic, sometimes known as white magic, are very real indeed. And there are a lot of people today who are practicing these techniques. There are some people that are casting spells against other people. There may even be people casting spells against me because I'm trying to expose the evil nature of these mystical practices and these ceremonies that are performed by people. A lot of it's done in secret, so we just don't know how many people are practicing either black magic or traditional Western
Hmm.
occult ceremonial magic. We just don't know how many people. There are some surveys out there that give some figures, but the
Hmm.
reality is we really don't know how many. But it is a very, very real world. And I
Hmm.
believe that Christians need to know about this world so that they are protected and they can help family members that are involved in these kinds of things.
Hmm. Right. Well, the end target or the target group of this webcast are not necessarily just Christians. So we would address this subject, this topic to everyone else which is interested, even people that are into the black magic thing. But before we go ahead, let's have a look at this video clip that does try to approach this topic of about black magic from a scientific perspective as well. So let's have a look at this and follow here. Right. Well, I think we've seen enough for now. My question to you now, it's actually you live pretty close to Mexico. Is this something, this thing about black magic, something which is very specific to Mexico or Hispanic population? We don't see that often this in Europe. But as this gentleman explained here, he's an anthropologist and he tried to do his job in a sense, and he came back obviously more confused that with no real explanation about black magic. What is your view on this?
Michael, it does appear that in the state of Sonora in Mexico, there is a lot more of this black magic going on, brujeria, as they call it. Uh, what I find very interesting, and we'll talk more about this later,
Mm,
is that Carlos Castaneda, the occult fiction writer that was responsible for drawing a lot of people into the New Age occult movement, he pictures his books within the Sonora Mexican Indian brujo culture, but he portrays his brujos, which would be called medicine men or witchcraft practitioners, he portrays them as benevolent people. These are good people that have very deep philosophical beliefs and they are possessed with great beneficial mystical powers. But the reality, when I myself investigated brujeria, I was very shocked to discover that brujeria is not about a mystical path of white magic. It is about sorcery, spells, malevolent, evil spells that are cast upon people for someone else's personal gain. And we will discuss that more. But it seems to be
mm,
very much a Latin American thing, but I've no doubt that it also occurs in
mm,
other cultures as well. And I've
mm,
no doubt that in European cultures, as part of regular ceremonial magic, sometimes the practitioners will revert to black
mm,
magic, casting spells on enemies and
mm.
uh, people that they in some way want to influence.
Yeah, and this is to be found in Africa as well, parts of Asia, especially India, if anyone has seen it and has been there. So this is a more like a worldwide phenomena. This is not something related just to the Hispanic population in South America or America as such, but it's a worldwide phenomena. Now, Will, when you were a priest in the New Age spirituality movement, did you ever practice magic, any kind of specifically black magic?
Well, the the mystical path that I was on was the path of white magic. So, absolutely, yes, I did practice white magic, but I will say I never practiced black magic. Never, ever practiced black magic. And I'm so thankful I didn't. White magic is bad enough. And I feel that my main job is to warn people about black magic. And I beg your pardon, to warn people about white magic and the sort of neutral version, ceremonial magic. But black magic is even worse still. And I'm thankful I never practiced black magic.
All right. Well, let's have a look at Harry Potter's references to black magic, since our series of this webcast are with reference to Harry Potter. And we mentioned before, for any of our viewers that have seen our webcast before in regards to Harry Potter, this is where we take all these occult practices. So we found that there are 28 occult practices which are being promoted through Harry Potter. So whether you're a Christian or just a secular person or any other religion, we believe as Christians that these are occult practices. So tonight and today's topic is going to cover the black magic topic. So where do we find this in the Harry Potter books? So we find it in book number 2, page 51 and 52. There is a short conversation. I'm not going to read it. It's on the screen here. Anyone can read it and have your own thoughts on this. We also find it in book number 3 on page 21. We see how there is a description of black magic process. And the last one that I could find by searching through the Harry Potter books was on book number 4 on page 655. Um, a mention to memory churn upon her were powerful. When I had extracted all useful information, her mind and body were both damaged beyond repair. She had now served her purpose. I could not possess her. I disposed of her. Well, so for me, at least, Will, I don't know about you and our viewers, but for me, these are clear indication that Harry Potter ideology, mentality, whatever you want to call it, is promoting very clear also this occult practice of black magic, maybe disguised in under different wordings and so forth. But again, it is not just interesting, but I would also ask the question, is it pure coincidence that the Harry Potter books do also touch on this occult topic of black magic? Or, as many people says, it's pure entertainment? Because this is how a lot of people and the promoters of the Harry Potter industry, which we mentioned earlier, it's we're talking about billions of dollars. They want us to believe, oh, just forget about these crazy people. This is just pure entertainment. So is this a coincidence that we find very specific occult practices? And in my view, this is one of the worst. If you could scale that on a, let's say, a scale 1 to 10, which one is worse than the other? Black magic. Because at the end of the road, practicing black magic, as we're going to discuss later, that could lead not just to a lot of bad things, but people are dying because of this. So is this pure coincidence that we find it in the Harry Potter book?
Michael, I don't think it's coincidence at all. My view, and I was involved in this occultism for about 12 years. My view is that the occult and all its practices is coming from Satan and his evil angels. It is a deception to draw people under satanic power and the control by Satan and his demons. And even if white magic is satanic, how much more dark is black magic? And the statements you read from Harry Potter, especially the second and third statement, that is blatant black magic. That is a blatant attempt at using some kind of ritual or incantation to work harm on someone else. That is blatant black magic. And so I personally feel that occult fiction writers are motivated by satanic power. They don't think they are. I'm sure J.K. Rowling does not believe that Satan is motivating her to write these books and to put this information in these books. I'm sure they are sincere in some way, thinking they're going to help young people, especially teenagers that have the type of problems in life that Harry Potter faced. A lot of teenagers, probably most teenagers, feel a lot of stress these days. And J.K. Rowling, I'm sure, probably thought maybe she's helping people with some of the ideas expressed in there. But I don't think it's a coincidence that these same materials produce scenes that are of black magic. And that is because the power that is behind these occult books, just like Carlos Castaneda, the power that is behind them is a deceptive power coming from Satan. And Satan doesn't care whether you're seduced into white magic or black magic or gray magic or any other color of magic. It doesn't matter. As long as you are not a Bible believing Christian with faith in God's word, the Holy Scriptures, Satan doesn't care. Any kind of magic, as long as you're part of his influence and his kingdom and his dominion.
Right. And he's more than happy. We're talking about Satan. He's more than happy to make everyone believe that he doesn't exist.
Yes, that is a major issue. And it's
Mm,
tragic now. There are some surveys that even within professing Christians, a substantial percentage no longer believes that Satan exists. They have been brainwashed by secular media, by fiction books,
mm,
by videos on YouTube. Satan is on YouTube, just like we're on YouTube and
mm,
other video platforms. Satan and all of his agents are there, and they have brainwashed our society, and they are in the process of brainwashing Christianity to
mm,
believe that Satan does not exist. Because if Satan does not exist, then we don't have to be afraid. We can
mhm,
treat these books like Harry Potter and Carlos Castaneda books very lightheartedly. We can enjoy them as
mm,
a form of entertainment because there's
mhm.
no real danger, because Satan doesn't exist.
Right.
And this is a terrible, terrible deception.
Mm. Well, we can take that further, but we will leave it here by just my comment because that's another subject. If one accepts that Satan exists, then automatically you will have to accept that there is a God. So probably this is where we are today. But now you mentioned earlier something about white magic and black magic. And per se, one would believe that white magic, well, that's the good one, right? If you look, I don't have with me here the yin and yang sign, but a lot of people already know that. But one would believe that's the good part. You have the white magic, you have the black magic. So we should, even if you don't believe in Satan, you should try to avoid the black magic. Maybe stay with the white magic if you can't avoid it. Could you explain our viewers what is the difference between white magic and black magic?
Well, Michael, let me first of all perhaps address the word magic.
Hmm.
In our culture, usually when we think of magic, we think of stage magic. We think of magicians on stage performing these incredible tricks. This is part of the entertainment industry. Stage magicians use sleight of hand, trickery techniques in order to give you the impression that they're doing
Hmm.
seemingly impossible tasks, and this is just for entertainment. There's
Yeah.
a whole art of stage
Hmm.
magic, and it uses illusion, it uses different kind of techniques to make you think that the impossible is being done. We're not talking about stage magic now, we're
Hmm.
talking about magic in the realm of spirituality and religion. And within spirituality and religion, we have really two kinds of, I would say three kinds of magic. You've got black magic, you've got ceremonial magic, and then you have white magic. And what is the difference
Hmm.
between the two? Well, let me start with white magic. White magic, in its technical sense, was something that was introduced by Helen Petrovna Blavatsky, the founder of the Theosophical Society. She was the first person to refer to white magic. And this is a spiritual path or a spiritual discipline. um, One of the students of the Theosophical Society that Blavatsky founded was Alice Bailey. And Alice Bailey was a mystic. She was a channeler. She channeled spirits and spirit guides, and she claimed that these spirit guides were the ascended masters. And she introduced white magic. And this was also known as the magic of the soul, or the way of the disciple. Now, the magic that I personally practiced was the white magic of Alice Bailey. This is used for benevolent purposes, never malevolent. In white magic, you never try to harm anyone. You live your life in harmony with the Hindu principles of harmlessness. And white magic is really a whole spiritual path. Now, ceremonial magic is a more generic term, and it is describing, also known as magic, just the
Mm.
word magic, but ceremonial magic is a more apt description. This is describing another occult path, which is not the path of theosophy, but another occult path that has a different history. And ceremonial magic is the use of incantations, invocations, verbalization of phrases and words and sentences that are supposed to help you to achieve God consciousness or to help you develop spiritually. And ceremonial magic uses teachings that come out of Rosicrucianism. It uses a lot of ritual that would be borrowed from Freemasonry. And it is not technically a form of black magic in the sense that black magic is a ritual and involves incantations and invocations that are designed to harm someone. So black magic, in essence, is malevolent. By definition, a black a person that practices black magic or goes to a black magician in order to have spells cast upon one of their enemies,
Mm.
they are doing this with the deliberate intent of harming someone. For example, you could be a businessman in a business relationship and your partner is basically uh, involved in business activity that is contrary to your business principles or contrary to your business model. In other words, he might be stealing money or he's working with competitors.
Mm.
And you might, if you were inclined that way, you might go to someone that practices black magic, or you might practice black magic yourself, and you will put spells on your partner to force him to change his ways. Or, for example, you may simply desire a certain woman that is married to someone,
Mm.
and you could invoke black magic rituals that will destroy this woman's marriage, obviously causing the husband a lot of suffering, but you do it with the intention that you are going to magnetize or draw this woman into a friendship with you. In other words, your desire, your sensual desires, uh, will be the motivation to want to practice black magic, to
Mm.
break up a marriage, and to then invoke that this woman will be attracted to you so that you can have relations with her. This is
Mm.
obviously a totally selfish, a very self centered goal, a very self centered ambition where you, for your personal gain, are willing to cause harm to someone else and break up that marriage. So, this is really the difference between
Mm.
these three types of magic. And the black magic is the malevolent one, the one that is designed to harm other people.
All right. Well, does one have to believe in Satan? Let's say that someone is going to a magician to cast a spell on another person. Do I have to believe in Satan for the spell to work? Because, well, there is a reason I'm asking this question, but I don't know if you have any background information on this.
Well, let me say that black magic, white magic, and the in between ceremonial magic does not involve any kind of belief in
Hmm.
Satan or the use of satanic power. Most of the ceremonial magicians, a famous one being Aleister Crowley, the notorious British
Hmm.
occultist that lived in the first half of the 20th century, they didn't even believe Satan existed at all. So
Hmm.
we're not dealing with Satanism or a belief in Satan. We're dealing with spiritualism and a belief in spirits,
Hmm.
and that these spirits will respond to ceremonial rituals that one performs, and that the spirits will be sort of a bellboy for you and carry out your tasks for you if you will simply perform rituals and invoke them. It's interesting that most of the people involved in ceremonial magic don't question where these spirits come from
Yeah.
and what kind of spirits are they. It is just assumed
Hmm.
that they are good spirits, or at least they're good for your purposes. When I was involved, deeply involved in the New Age movement, and I was channeling spirits, channeling ascended masters, I'll be honest with you, for some reason, I never questioned where these spirits come from. And I
Mm.
think the reason I didn't question them was because I did not believe in the existence of Satan. It just sounded bizarre to me that
Hmm.
a great leader of evil, an archangel of evil, existed and that he had hordes of demons that were uh, seducing us into sin, which was in our eyes viewed as something enjoyable. It just didn't make sense that Satan existed. And if you come from a belief that Satan does not exist, then you're going to
Hmm.
assume there are no evil or satanic spirits, that these spirits are either neutral or they're benevolent. They're coming from God and that they can benefit you and benefit your life.
Hmm.
But I think a tragedy is that people that practice Wicca witchcraft or other forms of ceremonial magic, they don't believe Satan exists. And this is
Right.
the biggest delusion that
Mm.
exists in the world today.
Yeah. And you actually guessed my background asking this kind of question, as you mentioned, that someone would not necessarily ask the question about what kind of spirit, what kind of force is going to be behind this kind of practice when we're talking about either black magic or white magic. You also labeled the spirit as being neutral, which brings me to another question. If that spirit is neutral, that means there is a neutral real, let's say, in between good and evil. How do we again define good and evil? I don't want to go into that philosophical discussion, but someone might ask this question. So if I use somebody to cast a spell, if I go into black magic, which we as Christian we know pretty well, according with the Bible where it comes from, but how can a spirit be used for good and bad at the same time? This is the confusion which I believe it's out there. If someone is thinking or hating somebody else or trying, as you mentioned before, to get another woman or have a business partner, or I want to try to do something for my own benefit, and I'm thinking, okay, I can use that spirit to this so and so for me. I hope you understand my
Michael,
reasoning. Yeah.
yeah, Michael, I think your philosophical perspective comes from the fact that you are a Christian. You
Mm.
believe in the Bible, you believe in the moral teachings of Jesus. But people that go to the services of a black magician or they
Mm.
themselves practice this, they are not coming from a Christian
Right.
moral and ethical background. So for them, they're not even asking these questions. It
Mm.
doesn't matter to them. The
Hmm.
only thing is, what works? Does it
Mm.
work? If I perform this ritual, is this woman going to leave her husband and be attracted to me? And am I going to be able to enjoy this woman? Or if this business that I'm involved in, will it
Mm.
be more successful if I practice these ceremonial rituals and invoke spirits of prosperity? See,
Right.
the ceremonial magic is all a matter of what is going to work. Is it going to work? Then
Hmm.
the means justifies the ends if the end
Okay.
is, in your eyes, going to be beneficial. These
Yeah.
magicians, they don't think philosophically like you would and I would as a Christian,
Or
because they
ethically.
don't know Jesus. They don't know a better path. They
Mm.
don't realize there is a far better way of living. There's a far superior spirituality that brings
Mm.
true wholeness, true healing, and true blessings in your life through the Lord Jesus Christ.
Right.
These people just don't have that knowledge, you see.
So there is no moral perspective in black magic per se. Can I say that?
In black magic, absolutely. Yes, yes. But
Right.
I wouldn't say that for ceremonial magic or white magic. In those areas, there is moral perspective. It's not going to be exactly the pure Christian moral perspective, but there would be some moral perspectives in
Okay.
white magic.
Well, before we discuss black magic into more details, could you please describe to our viewers the nature of white magic you practice as a New Ager, your own experience?
Was, as I mentioned, my spiritual path was the path of white magic, and it was originally introduced by Helen Petrovna Blavatsky. She was a Russian mystic that visited India and Tibet. She met the Indian swamis and gurus in India, and she read a lot of the Hindu scriptures, and she was inspired by spirit guides. She was a medium, a channeler of spirits, and she supposedly contacted these ascended masters that introduced the teachings of theosophy to Blavatsky. And with a man called Olcott, she founded the Theosophical Society in New York City in 1875. And this was really the very first New Age organization that was bringing in this new age of Aquarius, bringing in new spiritual teachings for planet Earth to prepare them for this spiritual evolution that was going to happen in this age of Aquarius. Now, one of the students of Blavatsky's teachings was Alice Bailey. She was a British lady that emigrated in her young years to California, and she started reading Blavatsky's books, especially the book titled The Secret Doctrine. And Bailey joined then a large Theosophical Society commune called Crotona that was based in Hollywood. This was about 1919, when Alice Bailey joined this commune that I think had been there from about 1912. And they had buildings and they had chapels and they had temples there as part of this community. Alice Bailey started channeling these spirits that claimed to be ascended masters, and she then introduced new teachings into theosophy. She developed theosophy much further than it had been, and she claimed that on planet Earth there were 49 super developed human beings that she called ascended masters. And she claimed that Jesus Christ was one of these ascended masters. She claimed that after Jesus ascended to heaven, he then came back to planet Earth. And for the last 2,000 years, he has been living on planet Earth as a recluse somewhere. I'm not sure where they claim he is. There was other New Age occultists claim that he's been living in London, England, but others dispute that. But Alice Bailey was channeling these ascended masters, specifically a master called Joel Kuhl, that eventually became my spirit guide. My personal spirit guide was Joel Kuhl. Now, I believe he is a demonic spirit. He's not really a superhuman being claiming to be over 400 years old, living as a recluse in Tibet. I don't believe that anymore. I used to. But I was channeling this spirit guide, Joel Kuhl, and Alice Bailey was, and she introduced these new teachings for theosophy and for the New Age movement that were published in a series of books. I think there might be a total of something like 24 of these books in total. They were published, I think, around 1920, 21, and maybe the last of them were published in the 1950s. Alice Bailey eventually left the Theosophical Society and founded her own organization called the Lucis Trust and the Arcane Workshop organization. And these books are really are the foundation for the modern New Age movement. And one of these books, which was a textbook in the New Age Center where I was a disciple and a student, one of these books was titled A Treatise on white magic. I think you will have it on the screen there. And this book, Treatise on White Magic, describes this spiritual path, also known as the way of the disciple, and it is also known as the magic of the soul. And this is the path that I was on of white magic. And it is basically an Eastern mysticism path. It involves the practice of transcendental meditation, involves channeling spirit guides. Now, we were channeling specifically these ascended masters like Saint Germain, Master Moria,
Mm.
Master Katume, Lord Maitreya, the Christ, as he is called. There were several of these ascended masters. Sanat Kumara, who was supposedly a great spirit being from Venus that oversees or supervises the work of the ascended masters. And we were channeling these spirit beings, and it was a path of spiritual development so that we could become disciples of the masters and help introduce the new age movement in preparation for the new world order, which would be a political organization as part of the new age movement. And we were preparing for the coming of the Christ, or the reappearance of the Christ, or the second coming of the Christ. Now, this is in reality going to be the coming of the Antichrist, not the coming of the Christ. But we ourselves, as part of the New Age movement, believe that we were working to help bring about the second coming of the Christ. But we were totally deceived. But this is a path that we were on. It was a path of personal development, yes, never a path of casting spells, evil spells against other people. Never. It was always a benevolent path, and it was always a path where we were helping to further the spiritual development of humanity, of civilization, of our culture. So it was never just a selfish path. The
Mhm.
path of the white magic of Alice Bailey was always a path where, yes, you are developing yourself, but you are developing humanity, and you have a duty to develop other people's spiritual abilities, to develop, to help other people to become what we thought was being close to God. But
Mhm.
in reality, we were all deceived. This was just another deceiving initiative of Satan, white magic. Technically, it's not black magic in the sense it's not designed to be malevolent, it's not designed to hurt other people,
Mhm.
but it is still, in reality, satanic. It is Luciferian. It is coming from Lucifer. And we were all terribly deceived. And I
Mm.
believe the whole New Age movement is deceived. People are sincere. They want to draw near to God. They want to improve the condition of planet Earth. They want to try to bring peace and harmony in our world. The tragedy is, though, Satan himself and all his evil angels are behind this movement. So, black magic is satanic, Satanism is satanic, ceremonial magic is satanic, and white magic is also satanic, and it is terribly deceptive. I personally grieve
Mm.
at the huge number of people that are now getting involved in New Age spirituality, and they have no knowledge that this is all demonic
Mm.
and satanic. It is very, very tragic.
Mm. Well, it is quite interesting how Satan is able to deceive and betray a lot of people that believe that, as you said, part of that New Age, part of the white magic movement would believe that this is something which is good, that brings good, a personal good or good to humanity or local community. And at the same time, he's also working behind the black magic. Do we see any interconnection in between the white magic and the black magic? Or sit from a new age perspective, are we talking about different, let's say, realms of reality?
No, I don't think we're talking about different realms of reality. We're talking about different motives. White magic involves ceremonial rituals, just like black magic involves ceremonial rituals.
Mm.
The only difference is the motivation. In
All
black
right.
magic, there is evil intent, whereas in white magic and also most of ceremonial magic, also known as just magic, the intent is supposed to be good. I mean, that's you're supposed to be developing your spirituality. You're doing these rituals for healing, just like in Wicca witchcraft, which is part of, in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
ceremonial magic. You're doing this for healing. You're doing it for blessings. You're doing this to uh, elevate your own life, to have a better prosperity than you had, or better employment possibilities than you had, to try to improve your own life. I mean,
Mm.
the goals of white magic and ceremonial magic are what make it different than
Mm-hmm.
black magic. The goal of black magic is to hurt someone, for you to be selfishly benefited, but at the expense of someone else's bad luck or misfortune. And both all of the paths involve supernatural power. This is the
Mm-hmm.
common denominator between all three paths, is that there is a supernatural power that is out there. And the New Agers believe it's from God. They don't believe it is coming from Satan and his evil angels, but there is a
Mm.
supernatural power out there. How can we use this power? The New Ager that practices white magic or ceremonial magic or Wicca believes that they're using this power for good, whereas those who practice black magic intentionally use it for knowing that it will harm other people, and then and will, as in
Right.
the brujeria, they will deliberately use it to harm other people.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the intention is different, the goal is different, but do these two parts, let's say the New Age and we have the black magic part of the picture, do they believe that, are they talking to the same spirits? Is this the same force? As you mentioned, New Age, they look at it as being New Agers, as coming from God. Brujas, or the ones practicing black magic, they know probably pretty well that these spirits are, in a sense, evil spirits, since they can provoke even death or bad things to happen to people. But we're looking at two sides of the same spirit, right? Is that correctly understood? Do we have the same spirit that you can approach from a white magic perspective and a black magic perspective?
It was my discovery after 12 years of involvement in the New Age movement. Now, I was not always involved in white magic, that was the last 7 years, but 12 years in total. It was my discovery that the spirit behind this is evil. It is Satan and his
Mm.
evil angels. Now, our main source of knowledge on this is the Holy Scriptures. I'm a Bible believing Christian. I think it's a wonderful way to live. Jesus said that we will be blessed in this life as well as in the life to come. So I would not want to change my life, even though I have to confront evil spirits. Evil spirits do not like me being a witness on Light Channel or any other kind of videos. They don't like me writing documents or books or articles at all. And so I do get harassed. But in spite of that, I still think that the Christian walk is the most blessed walk
Mm.
that there is. Having faith in Jesus, having Jesus as your friend, having the Holy Spirit to be at your
Mm.
side, to be your counselor, your comforter, your assistant. Um, in the Bible itself, there is very clear there are no three powers in the Bible. There are only two powers. There is the power of the God of Israel.
Hmm.
This was the God of Abraham, the God of Noah, the God of Moses and the Israelites, and the God of the Lord Jesus Christ and the Christian church. That is all one power. That is the true power of God that created the heavens and the earth. And in the Bible, there is no neutral power. There is only one other power that is the great adversary of God, and that is the power of Satan. He is the great archangel of evil. He is
Mm.
symbolized as a serpent there in Genesis chapter 3, in which he tempts Eve and tempts Adam. This great evil power of Satan, also called Lucifer in the book of Isaiah, the great dragon, also in the book of Revelation. There is his power, and he has a horde of evil angels with him. There was a rebellion, we're told in the book of Revelation. There was a rebellion in heaven, and Satan, the serpent, also known as Lucifer, also known as the devil, he and his evil angels were cast out of heaven. So there's only two powers in the Bible. Now, in our world, we have a sort of in between, what we could call the secular world, that often neither believes in God nor disbelieves in God. Agnostics, there are a lot of agnostics out there that are sitting on the fence. But in terms of power, there are only two powers: the power of the Creator God, Yahweh, the Lord God Almighty, and the power of Satan and his evil angels. So, yes, whether it's white magic, whether it's
Mm.
ceremonial magic, whether it's Wicca, whether it's black magic, whether it's Satanism, you're dealing with the power of Satan and his evil angels.
Mm. Right. Well, did you practice as a in your former path of white magic, did you practice any of these ceremonial rituals?
Yes, I did. In our New Age Center, which was called the Lighted Way, it was based in Los Angeles, founded by Muriel Isis, a professional psychic and spirit medium and channeler of the Ascended Masters. Our path was basically the path of the Alice Bailey books, this path of white magic. In our worship services and during the workshops that we would have on the weekends and sometimes in the evening classes, we would practice some ceremonial rituals. It wasn't a major part of our religious practice, but we did them. These ceremonies came from ancient pagan Egyptian religion and spiritual practice. We called this the Isis flame ceremony,
Mm.
and we would practice it every worship service. Muriel had a sort of a medium-sized brass container, like a vessel, and in this container, we were placing pieces of paper on which we had written prayers. In other words, she would hand these blank pieces of paper to people in the congregation or in the workshop, and we would write certain prayer requests on these pieces of paper. These pieces of paper were then deposited in this brass vessel. It was like an urn, if you will. And she
Mm.
would then set this urn on fire, and the flames and the smoke would then arise. And this was to be a symbol of our prayers rising heavenward. And this was called the Isis flame ceremony. Muriel's last name, which was an adopted name, was Isis. This is named after pagan Egyptian goddess Isis, and she had a son,
Mm.
Osiris. And so this was part of the occult of the pagan Egyptian
Mm-hmm.
religion. We also had um, a pyramid in the center that we would light. We would light candles, and we would have light circles. We would sit in a circle, and we would have candles in the middle of the floor burning. But our rituals were fairly simple. They were not anywhere near as complex as the rituals that you will find in Freemasonry or within ceremonial magic, or within some other practices like Wicca.
Mm.
Witchcraft is a form of ceremonial magic. they were not as complex as that. Our main ritual, actually, though, of white magic was rituals that we would visualize whilst practicing Eastern transcendental meditation. Absolutely. Our meditation that we were taught, which was called the garden meditation, was a set ritual, and it was part of this Kundalini meditation, part
Mm-hmm.
of Kundalini yoga, and it involved within our own minds, in the imagination, going through certain ceremonial rituals. The ceremonial rituals that I mainly practiced were part of transcendental meditation, and this was part of the Kundalini yoga, and they were set rituals that were practiced inside your mind, in your imagination faculties. In the workshops and classes, we were trained how to use the imagination faculties
Mm.
of the mind. We used to practice this, and with practice, yes, I was able to uh, carry out these rituals as part of meditation. So these were mental rituals rather than physical rituals. They certainly involve, before meditation, I would always light a candle on the altar that I had in my apartment. I had incense that I would light, and I would burn incense. I would often kneel in front of this altar. Sometimes I would practice the meditation kneeling in front of the altar, and sometimes I would then either sit on the floor in the lotus position of traditional Hindu meditation, or sometimes I would sit in a stool or a chair. But the ceremonies primarily were inside the mind, mental imagination rituals.
Mm. Okay. Well, it seems that the type of New Age or whatever religion you have practiced before was a mixture, or if I might use the term, cocktail of different pagan practices, which at that time you didn't know, or did you realize they were pagan? But it seems that this cocktail of practices was brought together by these different masters, these different people that have been setting up these practices, with a purpose to elevate yourself to a higher level. Now, you mentioned Kundalini in connection to black magic. The topic for today it's black magic. You mentioned Kundalini. Maybe some people doesn't know what is Kundalini. Um, there is something called Kundalini yoga, and in connection with that, I found on the internet a short video which I'm going to show now. Uh, I think we should listen, we should hear what this individual has to say. He calls himself a Kundalini and Kaya Kalpa yoga master, and he's actually explaining how does black magic affect Kundalini yoga. So have a look at this his explanation.
The intention of a black magician is to harm that particular target person. When that target person happens to be a Kundalini yogi or a Kundalini meditator, we have seen that the black magic is repelled automatically because the heightened level of life force energy and the magnetic presence of this person, the magnetic powers of the person, automatically repel such negative effects or negative energies or negative frequencies back to the black magician, such that it goes back and affects such a person. You will be protected because of your Kundalini Shakti. Be blessed by the divine.
All right, this is not a commercial for this individual because we would strongly advise our viewers to not follow his suggestions. But we want to be fair here at Light Channel TV, and we wanted to to listen to a person which obviously he's practicing these practices, these occult practices, what we as Christians. This person is also explaining the link in between Kundalini and black magic, as I understand. He's also explaining how you can use this Kundalini energy or power, which they believe is to be found within every single individual on this planet. So the question, Will, here, if I'm not mistaken, Kundalini meditation, which we also find in the charismatic movement today, charismatic Christianity, is also known as, they use another term, serpent power meditation, and is part of a spiritual discipline known as Kundalini yoga. Is that correct? Because this is very confusing for, I guess, a lot of people that never heard about this terminology. But do not forget that Satan is also the father of confusion, and he loves, and this is one of his methods to create confusion, especially through these terminologies, these practices, these pagan practices, which has been brought and mingled into Christianity. So Kundalini meditation, black magic, serpent power meditation, all of these put together, what do we have?
Well, Michael, let me make a comment about one of your earlier statements pertaining to paganism. I find it amazing, thinking back, that in the Lighted Way New Age Center, we used to practice a Egyptian mystical ritual that was called the Isis flame ceremony. And I'm now well aware that the religion of Egypt was a pagan religion. And I'm well aware that the Hindu religion is a religion that has a multitude of gods. There are three primary deities, Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. And these, in our Christian perspective, are pagan deities. And yet, when I was involved in the New Age movement, practicing white magic, I never identified myself or saw myself as being following a pagan religion. And this is because even though we were following the Hindu philosophies of Vedanta Hinduism, we never actually worshipped any of the deities of Hinduism. We did not have idols of Shiva or Vishnu or Brahma or Kali, Durga, some of these other deities. We never had idols that we stood in front of and bowed to and kneeled in front of and worshiped. We always used Western language of God, that we were worshiping God, and that our devotion was to the same God as the God of the Bible. This was in our own belief and thinking. So it's amazing. I never ever thought that I was a pagan, worshipping pagan religions. Now, this is in contrast to practitioners of Wicca witchcraft, which is the craft described in Harry Potter books. They openly acknowledge they are pagans, and their main deity is the goddess and the consort of the goddess, the horn god Pan. So Wiccans openly acknowledge and openly boast that they are pagans, but this was not the case for most of the New Agers that were on the path of white magic, basically following the Hindu teachings of theosophy and all its many offshoots. Now, in terms of Kundalini yoga and Kundalini meditation, within the mystical aspects of the Hindu religion, you have this transcendental meditation practice. And you've all, I'm sure, seen gurus, pictures of gurus sitting cross-legged on the floor in the lotus position with their back held erect, and they are practicing this mystical transcendental meditation. Within that meditation, there is a section of it that is specifically called Kundalini meditation. And this is exactly what we were practicing in the New Age Center, where I received most of my training. This was in the west side of Los Angeles called the Lighted Way. Our main meditation was Kundalini meditation. The word Kundalini basically means coiled in the specific sense of a coiled serpent or a coiled snake. I mean, this is literally what it means. One of the major books written by an authority and researcher into Kundalini meditation, the actual book is titled The Serpent Power, subtitled The Secrets of Tantric and Shaktic Meditation. This was written under the pen name or the pseudonym Arthur Avalon, but the real author was Sir John Woodroffe. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was a part of the British Empire administration in India. And so he was out there in India and he was researching all the different Hindu practices, and he came across this Kundalini meditation. The theory of Kundalini meditation, also known as Kundalini yoga, is that human beings have dormant spiritual power inherent within them that is normally by default dormant, but it can be activated. And that this is mystical power. And if you activate this mystical power called the Kundalini energy, that you will be gifted with paranormal abilities. You will have mystical power that will be supposedly a great blessing in your life, and it will enable you to achieve God consciousness. In other words, your consciousness will be at one, will be at union with God. Now, the very word yoga is from the Sanskrit language of ancient India. It's the same word that we have in English as yoke, Y-O-K-E, and it means to be joined together or to be in union. Now, within the Hindu religion, yoga simply means to join yourself together with the God of Hinduism, with these pagan deities, or with the mystical ultimate reality God of Hinduism, which is called Brahman. The goal of yoga, to make yourself one or in a union with the gods of Hinduism, to yoke yourself together. Now, Jesus said we should be yoked to him. He said that we should be yoked to him because his burden is light and his yoke is easy. And by being yoked to Jesus, we truly become blessed. Now, if you're yoked to the gods of Hinduism, ultimately you're going to be cursed, I'm afraid. It's not a good thing at all. But Kundalini yoga is this methodology of raising up these energies. Now, this dormant energy that I mentioned, Kundalini energy, mystical power energy, supposedly lies at the base of the spine in what is known as the base chakra. The word chakra, again, is another Sanskrit word that means a power or energy center within the human body. And in Hinduism, it is taught that there are several of these different energy centers. One is in the middle of the forehead, called the third eye center. Then you have the crown chakra. Now, I'm not telling you that these are true power centers and that they really exist. I'm just saying what the Hindu mystical religion teaches. And within Kundalini yoga, this energy is supposedly dormant at the base of the spine. It is symbolized as a coiled serpent, a serpent that is in a coil, and that this, by practicing the rituals within your own mind of Kundalini meditation, you are supposedly able to activate this mystical power and this mystical energy. You're supposed to raise it up from the base through the different chakras, including the heart chakra, which is supposedly more or less in the same area as the human heart, or at least the same level on the spine as the heart. And then you have eventually the crown chakra, where this energy shoots out of the crown chakra and empowers you to be more spiritual and have more spiritual powers to supposedly heal people or to bring wisdom into people's lives and to be able to help mankind develop in preparation for this age of Aquarius. These are all what the teachings say. They are all a deception. But it is interesting that it is very open and clear, both within the Alice Bailey occultism, within theosophy, that this power is the serpent power. It is very, very open. They are acknowledging where it's coming from. And I am amazed. I was born and brought up in a Christian family. I am amazed that when I was being taught these teachings about serpent power energy, I'm amazed. I didn't even think in my mind, I didn't connect this with the serpent of the Bible. The reality was, when I was a Christian, I never studied the Bible. I had very little biblical knowledge, so I was not aware that Kundalini energy comes from the serpent, and that the serpent is just a symbol for Satan himself, the great archangel of evil, the great demon of evil. I was just not aware of that. And in the Bible, we are warned about Satan himself. You know, this whole white magic is all coming from Satan. Kundalini energy, it really is serpent power energy. But the serpent is Satan, not the benevolent God that the Hindus and the New Agers claim. It tells us there in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, verses 7 through 9. It says there, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. Michael is the great archangel of God. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he, that is the dragon, was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth and his angels with him. So it's very clear who the serpent is. The serpent is the devil. He is Satan, the archangel of evil that rebelled against God. Now, other parts of the Bible, for example, in Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah chapter 12, I believe it is, if I'm not mistaken, those passages of scriptures gives us a lot more information about Satan and his fall and why he fell, why he sinned in heaven through the sin of covetousness. He desired God's position in heaven. He desired the position that the Son of God had in heaven. He wanted it, he coveted it, and he fell into evil as a result of that. And eventually God had to cast Satan and his evil angels that rebelled with him, cast them out of heaven. But they are real. They're on this planet. We can't see them. They're normally invisible. I once did see them when I was given a vision. Satan himself gave me a vision of what one of Satan's evil angels looks like when they masquerade as an angel of light. It is very interesting that Alice Bailey's book, this book, Treatise on White Magic, if you go to Amazon or a bookstore, New Age bookstore, and you buy this book, it's published by what is called Lucis Publishing Company. And I don't know if the camera will pick this up. There we are, Lucis Publishing Company, Lucis, also known as Lucis Press. Now, the original name for this publishing company was not Lucis Publishing Company. It was called Lucifer. Lucifer Publishing Company was the original name. It was established by Alice Bailey and her husband Foster Bailey, who had been the secretary of the headquarters of the Theosophical Society when it was headquartered in Hollywood in Los Angeles. They founded this publishing company, and they called it initially in the early 1920s, they called it Lucifer Publishing Company. This is telling you where this stuff is coming from. But there was such an outcry against this name, and people were not willing to buy these books because of this name. I think Satan thought that the information in these Alice Bailey books was so fascinating, so innovative, so alluring, so drawing and captivating that I think Satan believed that people would buy the book, even though it was published by a Lucifer publishing company. And of course, Alice Bailey and Theosophists and the leadership of the organization that Foster and Alice Bailey set up, they all claim, well, Satan doesn't exist. Lucifer was a great angel in heaven, but he fell. The word Lucifer actually means light bearer or light bringer. They teach that he fell, but he learned from his mistake and he reformed himself and he was taken back into heaven, where he is now a great lighted being in heaven. This is what the New Age and the Alice Bailey movement and Theosophy teaches, but it is a lie. Lucifer is not back in heaven. He is invisible, most of the time invisible. He is on planet Earth, and he and his evil angels are working great mischief. And these ascended masters that Alice Bailey and other Theosophists and New Agers are channeling, they are Satan's evil angels masquerading as beings of light, and they are deceiving spirits. And this whole New Age, white magic, as well as black magic, is a satanic deception. I'm afraid that is the truth. I fervently believe that.
Right. Well, do you have any other Bible verses that you would like to cover? I have here with me from Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 through 15. These verses describes the fall of Lucifer from heaven. And that goes pretty much, very much in line with what you just mentioned before in terms of Alice Bailey and the fact that the publishing house was, I believe, in purpose called Lucy's Trust. Anyway.
Yes, they changed the name after 2 years. Lucis is just a play on the word Lucifer. Lucis is still the same, but it's benign. When I purchased these books in the bookstore area of the Lighted Way New Age Center there on the west side of Los Angeles, and I saw Lucis Publishing, I didn't ring any bell to me. I didn't know that Lucis is just a play on the word Lucifer. And of course, many people are buying these books and have no idea that this publisher was originally called Lucifer Publishing Company.
All right. Now, black magic is a topic and is a term which is being used in many other areas, even in music. And maybe some of our viewers are going to fall over when they hear, not bring back the music issue. We're not going to talk about the music issue tonight, but there is, according to our research, there is a connection in between music and black magic. And if you're a Bible believer, you do also know that Lucifer was the great musician in heaven. So music is being penetrated, of course, through every single of these occult practices, not just as a link, but as also as a tool to bring people on board on his platform. So let's hear for a few minutes what at least one of the most famous players in the music industry has to say about black magic. This is from Dave Mustaine. Maybe a lot of you, our viewers, maybe some of your viewers know him. He was a frontman for the heavy metal, one of the most heavy metal bands, Megadeth, where he voices his opinion on black magic, connects it to Satan worship in the heavy metal community, and how it has actually ruined his life. So have a look at what he's saying here.
In an interesting interview, Total Guitar caught up with Megadeth frontman Dave Mustaine talking about the album Peace Sells, But Who's Buying, and how he does not like playing certain songs because they contain black magic. He said, performance-wise, The Conjuring is one of the heaviest songs on the record, but unfortunately it's got black magic in it, and I promised that I wouldn't play it anymore because there's a lot of instructions for hexes in that song. Although it seems kind of corny, anybody who's a Wiccan or a warlock or anything like that will know that all of that stuff is instrumental. When I got into black magic, I put a couple of spells on people when I was a teenager, and it haunted me forever, and I've had so much torment. People say Dave never gets a break. He's had such a hard life, and I just think, no, Dave didn't. He got into black magic, and it's ruined his life. It wasn't that I was a bad guy or that I had a big mouth. It was that I got into witchcraft and black magic, and it's ruined my life. Fortunately for me, with all the work and the love of my friends, and not giving up with my guitar playing, I got over it. So I look back now and I think, I don't want to play The Conjuring. I look at songs like Black Friday and I think that would be a good song to play, too, but I look at the lyrics, which are about a homicidal madman who goes on a killing spree. Now, the irony of all of this is that I said I wasn't going to play it, but we've got the 25-year anniversary coming up, and people are saying we have to do this record. And I'm thinking that I can't possibly do that and stay true to myself. But I'm sure where there's a will, there's a way. When I first got saved about 10 years ago, I was really scared, and I was basically holding on to anything that I heard in church, or whatever. But as I've grown up, I've learned a lot and lightened up a lot. And I see people around me doing certain things, and instead of me saying, man, you shouldn't do that, I think quietly to myself, dude, you don't know what you're doing. It's a huge growth process.
All right. Well, this is one of many coming out of the music industry. This kind of music, probably a lot of people, some of our viewers, maybe most of our viewers, never watched or has been to a heavy metal concert. Neither did I. I don't know about you, Will. This is not music in my view, and I actually heard that from a famous musician in United States. They call it chainsaw sound. That's the terminology used about heavy metal. But nevertheless, we see here this musician, which is explaining his own experience coming out using black magic. And by the way, this video clip has been recorded from YouTube channel RNM, which is not related to any Christian organization or religious. They're just a YouTube channel promoting heavy metal music and whatever is happening in that world. So they were just reporting on Dave's experience with black magic. Now, well, Western occultism is usually associated with things like astrology, tarot, card reading, spirit communication, as you mentioned before, ceremonial magic. Now, is the practice of this ceremonial magic, because it sounds like it's somewhere in between white magic, black magic, but is this practice in the occult form, it's black magic or white magic?
This is an excellent question, and there are gray areas between the two. Ceremonial magic is part of what is known as Western occultism. In contrast to Western occultism, you have Eastern occultism, which is the Eastern religions, the mystery teachings coming out of Hinduism and Buddhism, and then you've some other mystery teachings like Kung Fu coming out of the Far East in China. But Western occultism is a occult. The word occult simply means hidden, closely related to the word esoteric. Esoteric is secret or hidden knowledge that only a handful or a few people are privy to, and they are supposedly privileged to be having a knowledge of these mystery teachings. So Western occultism developed from Europe itself. It didn't come out of the Hindu religion as did theosophy. Western occultism came out of Central Europe, and there are a couple of different versions of it, but the most common one, ceremonial magic, came out of the Rosicrucian movement. Rosicrucian is coming from the Latin. It simply means rosy cross. One of the emblems of that particular path or movement is a Christian cross. And in the center of the cross, where you have the intersection, there is a large red rose, the red rose flower. And these teachings appeared, if I'm not mistaken, probably in the beginning of the 17th century. That means the early 1600s. These teachings and documents suddenly materialized. It is claimed that there was a guy called Rosenkreutz, Christian Rosenkreutz, that was the author of these, but researchers seem to indicate, the evidence is that he didn't really exist, that this was a pseudonym for someone else, and that these teachings appeared, they were mystery teachings. They do claim a heritage that goes back to ancient pagan Egypt and perhaps even pagan Babylon. They claim these are a heritage from those pagan religions, and they are mystery teachings. And this teaching of Rosicrucianism involves rituals, ceremonial rituals. It involves incantations, which would be verbal phrases, magical words. Now, in stage magic for entertainment, they have abracadabra. Well, abracadabra would not be part of the Rosicrucian ceremonial magic. They would have different phrases, different words, perhaps in the Latin language. I've not been part of the Rosicrucian movement, so I don't exactly know what their rituals are. But they developed these rituals that believe that through verbalizing these phrases and these different movements that they would wear different kinds of robes, and they would have different movements as part of the ritual. They believed that they were able to invoke spirit power, mystical power that could be used for good purposes. That was their goal of the ceremonial magic that they practiced. And then some of these people that were practicing the Rosicrucian magic were also involved in Freemasonry. Now, Freemasonry technically is not a religious or spiritual organization. These are fraternal societies. These are friendship societies. They also promote high ethical and moral values. And they're, of course, traditionally places where businessmen can meet and meet other businessmen and have business gains through that. Meeting, contact people in other businesses that can further your business. But it's mainly a friendship, a fraternal organization, and they have different rituals. There are different degrees that you can have in the lodges, and there are different rituals to confer the degrees on the members of these different Mason lodges. Now, in Rosicrucianism, they adopted some of the rituals from Masonry. Masonry predated the Rosicrucian movement, but the Rosicrucian movement, they were not just interested in having a better understanding of human nature, like the Masonic lodges. They endeavor to better understand human nature and develop our human abilities and gifts and skills, but it's not necessarily spiritual or religious. In the Rosicrucian movement, they focused on developing spiritual aspects of our nature, the religious aspects. And of course, it became a movement globally. It was introduced from Europe into the United States and other countries, Australia, different parts of the world where you have the Rosicrucian movement. So ceremonial magic developed out of the Rosicrucian movement. Some of the people that started ceremonial magic were part of Rosicrucianism, but they wanted to develop the rituals further. And you have then some of the British ceremonial magic institutions being founded. The main one was called the Golden Dawn. Now, if I can just go back, I want to read here how the pioneers of Rosicrucianism acknowledged their origins date back to the paganism of Egypt and even the paganism of the Hindu religion of India. There's a statement here from one of the pioneers. It says, "Our origins are Egyptian, Brahmanic," that means from the Brahmanic religion of India. This is the Vedic Hindu religion of India. It is derived from the mysteries of Eleusis and Samothrace and the Magi of Persia. So they're going back to the Persian kind of Zoroastrian religion, and the Pythagoreans. The Pythagoreans were the people that followed Pythagoras, who was a Greek scholar. I believe they lived, if I'm not mistaken, in southern Italy, but he was a Greek scholar. He introduced some theorems in our modern mathematics, the Pythagorean theorems, and the Arabs. So they're tracing their heritage back to the Arabic occult arts. I doubt whether this would be Islam. Possibly they may claim that there's an Islamic connection. Now, within Great Britain, within the United Kingdom, there was an offshoot of Rosicrucianism developed that was more specifically identifying themselves under this blanket term of ceremonial magic. And this organization was called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, often just called the Golden Dawn. And this was founded by three Freemasons in the late 19th century, in other words, the end of the 1800s. And they established in the United Kingdom temples, and they integrated Mason rituals and Rosicrucian teachings into their rites and practices. And one of the famous people to join this Golden Dawn organization was the infamous Aleister Crowley, who was a British occultist. He joined the Golden Dawn, but Aleister Crowley was so sensational and so progressive that his joining the organization caused a lot of tension and stress. And eventually Crowley left and he joined then a German occult organization that was called Ordo Templi Orientis, also known by its acronym OTO, which comes from the Latin language. And he became head of its British branch, and he was very influential then within ceremonial magic to introduce these ceremonies and rituals into the United Kingdom. And he also traveled. He traveled to Egypt and he studied in Egypt the pagan religions of ancient Egypt, and he introduced new Egyptian pagan rituals into the OTO and developed a whole religion that he called Thelema. And he had a very interesting motto or slogan that was the central principle of his Thelema religion, and that was this statement: "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And this principle is totally selfish. Do what you want. In other words, if you want to do it, go for it. Do it. You know, a lot of advertising Commercial advertising has similar slogans today. They cater to our covetousness.
And it's the
And
antithesis of God's law.
yes, it's the antithesis. Yeah, don't do what God tells you to do. Don't do what God wants you to do. Don't do what is good for humanity. Don't do what is good for your fellow man. That is not the top priority. According to this ceremonial magic that Aleister Crowley introduced, doing what you want is of paramount importance. And of course, the Satanists, now I know today we're not discussing the Church of Satan and the Satanist movement, but they adopted Aleister Crowley's central principle. Now, in terms of Wicca witchcraft, which by far now is the most popular form of ceremonial magic, it is very interesting that Gerald Gardner, who was a British civil servant, he was the main person that introduced Wicca witchcraft. We call it neo-pagan witchcraft. He introduced this to our modern world. He was a member of a Rosicrucian order in England originally. So this Wicca witchcraft actually comes out of the Rosicrucianism. And Gerald Gardner, who wrote the pioneering book, Witchcraft Today. This is a copy of that book. This is what started the whole Wicca witchcraft movement and religion. Gerald Gardner was a student of Aleister Crowley's teachings. So you have a very close connection between the ancient pagan religions of Egypt and India and Babylon, connected through Rosicrucianism to Western occultism, and progresses into ceremonial magic of Aleister Crowley. And from Aleister Crowley's ceremonial magic of do what thou wilt, it is repackaged by Gerald Gardner. And Gardner was also a student of theosophy. He was a theosophist as well. He studied the theosophical teachings, and he packages this now into a new form of Wicca witchcraft that became known as Gardnerian witchcraft. But its heritage traces through Aleister Crowley, ceremonial magic, and really Aleister Crowley was practicing black magic, even though he never called it black magic. He was extremely selfish, extremely self-centered. These rituals were designed to give him mystical powers, give him fame, give him notoriety. He even boasted that some of his colleagues and others called him the beast 666. He used to boast about this. So we find that in reality, ceremonial magic and Wicca witchcraft is actually closely related to black magic, although technically speaking, they're not really the same thing. And of course, the Church of Satan, founded by Anton LaVey in San Francisco, that uses a lot of the similar teachings of Aleister Crowley. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. This then gets transplanted into this Satanism that is out there. It's real. People are Satanists. And what is very tragic is that Aleister Crowley himself, Gerald Gardner, the founder of modern witchcraft, the Wicca religion, and these other pioneers that were founding the Rosicrucian movement, the Rosicross movement, none of them believed that Satan existed. And so they believed that any kind of mystical power, any kind of supernatural power has to be either from God or it's from some sort of cosmic consciousness, kind of a neutral thing. But it doesn't come from Satan, because Satan and his evil angels don't exist. This is a terrible, terrible deception.